This slide cast we're looking at the other elements of the contract. So you'll recall in previous slide casts we talked about what the elements of the contract were. Remember, they are the things that need to be present for a contract to be regarded as a contractual relationship, to be legally binding. Otherwise it's not legally binding, it's not a contract, it's just a document. We talked about offer and acceptance previously. So the offer, someone needs to make an offer and someone needs to provide unconditional acceptance. And now we've got these other ones: legal capacity, genuine consent, proper form, legality, intention and consideration. We'll look at each one of those in this slide cast. So the first thing is legal capacity. Two parties to make up a contract. Some people may not be able to be one of those parties. Some people may not be able to enter into a contract. The first reason may be because of age. You cannot make a contract with a child. Children are regarded as too immature to be in a contractual relationship. Another one is mental condition. If the person is not capable of rational judgment, and that may be due to mental illness, so they could be having an episode or something like that, or they could be drunk, or they could be under the influence of drugs. So if at the time that they agreed to whatever the contract is or entered into the contractual relationship, if they were drunk or if they were with their face on drugs, whatever it is, then that is not regarded as a legally binding contract. And the last one is authority. The organisation, the person, that one of the parties that entered into the contract does not have the authority to enter into a contract. So if you go and work for a construction firm, you just start and then you go to your mate and say, oh, I work for this construction firm. Oh, you want your driveway built? Okay, what I'll do is I'll enter into a contractual agreement with you to build the driveway on behalf of my company. You can't do that. You do not have the authority to do it. There are specific people in your company, the directors, the owners, who are able to enter into a contractual agreement. Likewise, if you had, say, a sports club and you had a committee of a sports club, and the sports club's constitution might say that the committee are able to authorise works up to $1,000, but the committee decides they want a nice new sports hall, so they make a contract with a contractor for $1 million sports stadium or something like that. They can't do that. They do not have the authority to make a contract on behalf of the organisation. So those are two examples. The next one is genuine consent. The parties are not forced or tricked into entering into the contract, and that's called vitiating elements. So there's actions that could result in the person entering into the contract without their genuine consent. So for example, undue influence. Someone says, you agree to the contract, you agree to build me a house really, really cheaply, or I'll have you kicked out of the golf club, or I won't let you go out with my daughter, or whatever. Duress, physical or economic threat. Agree to the contract or I will hit you. Someone can't hold a gun to your head and say sign the contract. You sign the contract by all means. It's not legally binding because you were being forced to sign it. You are not entering into the contract willingly. Economic threat, and this is a risk in engineering. Councils might say, you agreed to do this work really cheaply for us, or we will not consider you for any further work. So they're threatening to take away your livelihood. So do this work really cheaply for us, or we won't consider you for future work. That's illegal. Innocent misrepresentation. So these next ones are all misrepresentation. The first one is innocent, means that you didn't do it deliberately. So for example, we could be talking about a pipeline project where you're digging a hole and you're putting a pipe in, and you might be the client and you're under the impression that all of the material under the soil, all the soil is clay soil. So you put out a contract saying we want you to install a pipeline in this clay soil. When the contractor starts digging up the ground, they find that it's rock. So it's not what they thought it was. So they entered into a contract thinking they were going to be digging in clay soil, which is easy, but now they have to do blasting and stuff to get through rock, which is not easy. So innocent misrepresentation, you didn't know that there was rock down there. It was an innocent mistake. Fraudulent misrepresentation would be if you knew there was rock down there and you decided you were going to try to put one over on the contractor. So you lied to him. You said, it's clay, no problems, give me a low price for it. Okay, and then he starts digging up and it's rock and you say, oh tough, you entered into a contract to lay the pipeline. Okay, so that's fraudulent. And then there's also a mistake, and the rock thing could be regarded as a mistake as well. So there's a significant mistake between parties. You didn't understand what each other was offering. So each one of those things there are vitiating elements, and if one of them can be proved to be present, then they can be shown that there is not a contract between the two parties and there's no legally binding relationship. And they don't have to fulfill their obligations. That's the big thing, is if there's not a legally binding relationship, then the parties do not have obligations to each other, and therefore if the one party suffers because the other one didn't do what they were supposed to do under the contract, if they can show, if there's not a legally binding relationship, they don't have any recourse to take it to court. Okay, so the next one is proper form. There needs to be certainty about what the contract is all about. And that is what essential terms are. Terms upon which the parties need to agree. So for example, if we're building a road, you need to agree on what the road is, how wide, how long, what sort of materials. You also need to agree what the time period is that the road is to be built in. You also need to agree what the price is. All those things are essential terms. They need to be clear and unambiguous, and it needs to be clear that it's a contract document. Most of an engineering contract is these essential terms describing what the work is. So you do the drawings showing what is supposed to be built. You do the specifications talking about what standards, what workmanship is required. Okay, a contract agreement has to be identified, so it has to be obvious that it's a contract. You're not just saying, oh, that's an interesting thing. It needs to be a contract document, and in engineering there is a set format, and that is very clearly a contract. Should be in writing, but sometimes you have oral contracts. You find that small jobs, they'll just be, this is what I want you to do, fine, I'll do it for this much money, and that's it. So oral contract is you speak to each other, you don't write anything down. Not a good idea, really bad idea. Even if you make an oral contract, you need to write it, you should write it down just to confirm it. Legality, the contract works have to be legal, and the consideration, which is the form of payment, needs to be legal. So I will pay you $10,000 to shoot my wife. Paying you $10,000 is legal, that's the consideration, but shooting my wife, that is illegal. So therefore we do not have a contractual relationship. I will pay you $10,000 to shoot my dog, not nice, but it is legal to shoot a dog. I will help you steal my wife's car if you give me your boat. Now him giving me his boat is legal, but stealing my wife's car is not. So the consideration in this case, the form of payment, is illegal. And I will give you my car if you give me your boat. Exchange of goods, they both have value, it is a legally binding relationship. Both is legal. Intention, both parties have the intention to enter into a legal relationship. I talked about it before. Someone comes along and starts cleaning your house and says, oh, we've got a contract for you to clean my house. No, you don't, because you haven't expressed your intention to enter into that contractual relationship. So in engineering contracts, the contractor signals his intention by submitting a tender and a price. The principal signals his intention to enter into a contract because he puts out the tender documents and he sends a letter of acceptance. Consideration is something in value in return for the work. Should be adequate, have value, be legal, and come from the other party. So in engineering, the most common form of consideration is the contractor provides a building or a house or a road or whatever it is, which is something of value. The principal pays him in money, which is something of value. So those are the elements of a contract, and you need to be aware of each one of them. And when you're going through the contract documents, think about each one of those, how those are expressed in an engineering project.